Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Emerging Brands Podcast. I have Melissa Gallardo, right? On the show today, the founder and CEO of Bonita Fierce Candles. We met at New York Now when I was asked to present the award for the emerging brand that I saw doing awesome things in the industry and who I thought had great potential for growth. And Melissa, I'm so happy that you're on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cool. And did I say your name right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So, the first thing to kick things off is I always like to ask people about their brand story. This is where I think all great brands start is a really good story, and yours is something that really stood out to me when I was looking at all the applications for the Emerging Brand Award. I loved your story. So, could you take us behind the scenes of how you started the brand?
So I started the brand back in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. I was commuting 2 hours each way into New York City for work. And then with the pandemic, I had a great pause. Meanwhile, a lot of people were picking up hobbies. So from crocheting to sourdough, I decided to pick up candle making. And I was already burning through so many candles working from home, and candles are my self-care routine. So when I decided to pick up candle making, it was also around May 2020. And in light of the events of May 2020, I was also coming into my Latinidad, my true authentic self, and then shopping more intentionally for BIPOC owned brands. So with all that in mind, I didn't find anything out on market that really represented my Latinidad. And that's when I decided to, become a certified, not really certified chemist of mixing and matching fragrance oils to create fragrances that really represented my heritage and culture. And so I started off with my cafecito con leche candle because I always grew up with my mom, brewing a cup of coffee in the morning. And I really wanted to intentionally create products that represented my childhood upbringings. But then as I launched the brand and grew the brand, a lot of people wanted to come along with the journey and we're suggesting new fragrances. So that's how we came up with like our coquito and our chata fragrances, our lavender fabulosa, because we don't see a lot of BIPOC voices, multicultural voices and stories in the home fragrance space.
I love how you honed in on that and really have doubled down on the sense, the stories, even from the colors of the packaging. When I saw you at New York Now, you had a candle lit, and just like the whole vibe of your booth, too, told that story. So, you mentioned about your community of people who were starting to rally around you in the early days. What did that look like as far as how you were building out the brand and knowing like, okay, this is the niche I really want to go after? I would love to hear what indicators you were looking at or how you were collecting feedback because again, your voice is so clear and your messaging is so clear and it sounds very community driven. How did you cultivate that in the beginning?
So, because when you're starting a brand, a lot of the time it's about you. And that's when I was really honing in on community online. In 2020, we were all stuck at home. 2021, it was more of the same. And I was, a young professional, and I was going out into other networks like We All Grow Latina, The Mujerista, and other networks online where there was already an established community of Latinas online, and really putting myself out there. I was attending virtual events, and then, in 2022 and 2023, it was like in-person events. And so that's when I really started to put the brand out there and just networking my way through the industry and understanding what are some of the needs of my community. People began following the journey online organically. And that's even how I got my first retailer. It was just a DM from a assistant buyer, and she was my target market. I was so grateful to see somebody in the retail space in the position they were at representing an underrepresented group of people.
That's also incredible how you've been building your social channel. That's something else that spoke out to me of bringing people along the journey of how you've been building the brand. So, what gave you that courage? Because it could be really scary. And especially if you are a founder of an underrepresented community, putting yourself out there, building a brand, building a business, it's daunting and it could be really intimidating. What helped you say, okay, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to share the journey. I mean, the fact that you got a DM from a buyer for your first retail, like the whole story, it's incredible. What helped you put it out there or start sharing more?
People really responded to authenticity and understanding like where I was coming from in the retail space. Like it's not the same when you just post just about the product. Like there's so much storytelling behind what we do. And especially like it's a candle. It's a saturated market. Like a candle's a candle at the end of the day until you put a ton of marketing and storytelling behind it. So because I'm the face of the brand, it's about how we're just organically growing, talking about, the fragrance stories and what's behind it. And then, the other stories of Latinas that they're all inspired by. So like we have two candles that are inspired by Latina trailblazers, like Azucar, which is based off Celia Cruz, and then Goma La Flor, which is based off of Selena Quintanilla, the Queen of Tejano. And while I didn't always resonate with those stories, so many other Latinas do. And part of my own story is that I'm a non-Spanish speaking Latina. So I know I'm an outlier, and it made me really hone in on the needs of my market. And going online and telling my story really resonated with people, not because I'm not Spanish speaking, but because there's a vast group of people that are underrepresented and they're not understood. So there's people that are like bi-culture. There's people who have been so assimilated, like I have, who are non-Spanish speaking, didn't grow up in a majority Latino community in a major city, but there's also recent immigrants and people who identify more as American, people who identify with their countries of origin in Latin America. So understanding where my brand also fit into this huge spectrum, and the way I told my story has always been, I never felt like I was enough in this culture. Like I knew the foods, I knew the music, but I get language while in my upbringing. But a lot of people, other people did, and so we still do a lot of Spanglish marketing. So some of our fragrances are in Spanglish, some of them are just fully in Spanish. So it is such a huge spectrum of people that we're reaching, and also we're in the gifting space, so people who don't aren't Latino, non-Latinos really resonate with the product because sometimes their spouses are Latino, sometimes their kids are Latino, and they have Latino friends. Like it is such an underrepresented space, and people really resonate with the fact that I'm trailblazing through a up space. Sorry, my dogs are barking. Can you hear them? Just want a quick pause.
No, you're good.
Okay. And like they're kind of distracting me.
Oh, you're doing awesome.
Where was I going with this?
Creating the brand in a
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
So creating this brand online has really been able to allow me to communicate more with my audience.
I think that really resonates also, even from how you've been storytelling, the sense of the candles, how you've been strategic with different retail partnerships. I could get that sense that it's very community driven. I would love to hear more about the retail experience of getting into your first retailer. You've landed some major retail partners, and especially the fact that your products are in a space that hasn't had that much representation. How has those conversations been going? Or what about your products are really resonating with retailers? I would love to hear more of how you're helping connect those dots.
Definitely. So the retailers really came, you know, with the thought that we would be part of their BIPOC initiatives. Like we're Latina owned, we're creating, brand new scents that you don't see on major retail shelves. Like you don't see like pumpkin coming from us, you don't see lavender lemonades of the world. Like there's so many brands that are doing that. And so our point of difference is really at the scent point. So you won't find a lavender fabulosa, you won't find a coquito or an horchata, elote, like these very instinctively Latino things. And we're also a big part of it is surrounded by Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month. So with these retailers, a lot of the times that we will launch just around that time because people are shopping Latino and people are shopping, for candles during the holiday season. And I must say, and very transparently, it is very difficult to manage the retailers. When I did the first Barnes and Noble PO, I was going out of my mind a year ago. I had bitten off so much more that I could chew because we hand poured every single candle coming out of my childhood home. And even on my
Wow.
socials, like I had documented, you know, getting 2,000 pounds of wax up my driveway. Like the driver dropped off this huge pallet at the very tail end of my driveway, and it's at a slight incline too. And he wouldn't back into my driveway. He's like, "No, I'll get fired. Like it's a liability." I'm like, "Great, what are we gonna do?" And we even used like an old clunker car that we had. We were literally set for the junkyard the next day. We were able to get it started and use the car to push the pallet up the driveway into my garage because, there's 40, 45 to 50-pound boxes on that pallet and it had to go. We were not going to depalletize the pallet at 7 p.m. Like we just used the pallet jack, got it guided it into the garage via the car, just pushing it in like it. And we even built the pallets in the August heat one day. So like the day I knew that the truck was going to come, confirmed, like it was dispatched, like the day before we, at like 7, 8 o'clock when it was about sunset, we laid out all the pallets, built every one from scratch in my backyard. We had to cover them up. That way they wouldn't melt in the August heat. And that was the day I celebrated them walking out the door. Not the day of launch, but the day they walked out the door. 7,000 candles.
Wow.
And nobody really understands and sees that kind of experience. And and how when you're bootstrapping as a founder, like it can be so overwhelming to see the compliance guidelines and then managing your relationships with the buyers. And to be transparent, even more transparent, we haven't gotten an order this year from a major retailer because so much legislation has been passed disregarding DEI initiatives. Think about the state of Florida
Right.
and how there's legislation going after colleges and corporations are, pulling back, celebrating diversity. Think about the lawsuits from Hello Alice and the Fearless Fund Foundation. They're directly going after all of the initiatives that really uplift us. And I can see it in my business because when we want to see, a celebration of Latino voices and stories, their hands are tied. So it has been an extremely challenging year navigating these relationships and pushing these retailers like we have something to say. People want these products. But because we're also in a landscape where you're competing against the biggest brands at these
Right.
retailers, you're brought up to those same standards. This even playing field isn't very even because an indie brand, as a bootstrapped brand, you can't go for all these crazy marketing initiatives. Like we can't do an in-person pop-up. We can't like, and though they cost us for the space, like the square footage that you need, they want free product. They want you to, discount your products for, anniversary sales or, these deals of the week over the summer. Like it's not possible for us to do those things. And because we don't do these things, it's we're disregarded. Our
Mhm.
voices aren't heard as they should be.
How do you work through that? Because I'm sure that's really disheartening at times.
It's challenging, but that
Right.
also means that we are, shifting the priorities from major retail into the indie stores. And
Okay.
honestly, it feels so much better because we can create so many more meaningful relationships. And because we're so community driven, it just makes sense that we invest back into local economies. So
I love
doing
how
shows like New
you've
York Now.
connected those dots, yeah, of shifting to more indie. So what were you saying about New York Now?
So like New York Now has been such a great success for us because people get it. And I've been to
Mm,
trade shows where people don't get the brand. Like I say Latinx candles, people don't get it. You have to be in the major cities. You have to be a person of color to understand why this product is needed. Being a young person, sometimes I experienced the looks like why is this a thing? And people don't inherently see the value in a multicultural product because they're just used to what they know. And so New York Now has been able to really uplift my voice and my brand's voice around multiculturalism and has brought in and their marketing of buyers. So we have a bigger platform and they are convinced about the story and we're getting reorders. Like it is such a huge investment to go into a trade show and to see such valuable buyers there. And I can connect with the owners. Like it's not hard to get in touch with the small businesses of the world. And it's not a huge hit when, one small business goes out of business, which is always so unfortunate, but there's always more businesses opening up too. So
right.
it's a matter of, us being able to support and uplift those small businesses. And we also use social for it too. Like we highlight them on our email marketing. We're like, here are a bunch of LGBT owned businesses, here are a bunch of women owned businesses, disability, veteran owned on our social media. And we're able to create better relationships with these retailers. And then every time I travel, I get to go and meet the owners. I get to understand their customer base and create and build more community that way, which feels so much more authentic than going
Right.
after a major retailer where we may not even get an order and they don't always inherently see the value. And we're always fighting against turnover at the major retailers. Like I can talk to the owner and that will never change. Meanwhile, I have gone through 3 buyers in the last 2 years at one retailer. I there in one year, it can be 2 buyers, and I'm reestablishing the relationship over and over again.
Right. And it sounds like in the major retail space, you're more so looking at seasonal business versus what it sounds like in the indie retail space, it's more year round. Like, sure,
Absolutely.
there's different times where maybe the not knob is turned up, right? But it sounds like it's a more sustainable business model also because year round they want to be celebrating voices like yours and products like yours.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
I think that's a really smart shift, and I think a lot of founders can resonate with that as far as this is what maybe you thought you had to accomplish in order to quote unquote make it, but you found a path that's more sustainable and aligned and that you enjoy building, and that is what's really working for your business.
Yes, absolutely.
We love a moment like that. What is the vision for your company?
I mean, the vision has always been to celebrate Latino voices and stories and uplift our community in every aspect of their life. Like celebrate the moments where, you graduate college, or celebrate the moments where you get a promotion. We want to be able to share the uniqueness in the spectrum of our Latinidad. And as we're one of the fastest growing populations in the US, somehow we're always so underrepresented. So I want to always explore the the beauty of fragrance. And on a personal note too, it's a lifelong journey for me to reclaim my roots. And I don't always identify with my country of origin. My parents were born and raised in El Salvador, and I'm a first generation graduate, college student, etc. But I resonate so much with being Latina American, like a Latina living in the US more than, where my parents are from. So exploring the culture, the Latino culture in New York, like exploring the culture across the US and creating better products, better for you products that represents all Latinos in the US.
Incredible. What advice would you share to a founder, maybe someone who's in the fragrance space or lifestyle space, or even in a different vertical, food, beverage? What would you share with them when they're in those beginning stages, or maybe they've hit that roadblock with like a major retailer, or they're just trying to find their own path? They're doing something different, they're underrepresented, or what their vision is for their product and business hasn't really been done before. What would you share with that founder?
I always say first that everything doesn't have to be perfect the first go around. Like when
Mm,
you go to launch, like the people who are budding in their idea phases, you don't have to have everything perfect at launch. It evolves with you, your brand evolves with you. For the people who are hitting a huge roadblock, I always say to go back to your brand foundation. So, really understanding your mission, your vision, understanding your customers, their wants and needs, and separating them from your own wants and needs. So, like, while you drive the brand, you are not fully the brand. The brand has its own voice, and you want to be able to communicate that message and your unique value proposition. For the people who are going into major retail, understand that it's yes, it's about, that name brand, that recognition, but it's a huge financial burden. This in as somebody who is the only full-timer on a team, this does eat up all of your time. That getting this experience the first 3 times I've launched into retail, it would have to be such a great deal for me to do it all over again. I always encourage people to have great accounting and great legal because those two things you can't skimp out on. It is so important to have contracts reviewed and that you have your financials in order.
yes. And that too, I've learned the hard way in business. And now growing and building from here, those have become such important factors, even for someone who, like myself, is so obsessed with the brand, but you need that stuff and the logistics to be dialed. So I'm really glad that you touched upon that, because sometimes that's like the unsexy, boring stuff, but it really makes such an impact.
We didn't go into business thinking that we want to do legal and accounting,
Right.
which no, like I didn't think anything of it, but I've also understood like that is the bottom line, like running
Right.
a business. And it's you can't skimp out on it. Like you have to invest when you're ready. And it's too overwhelming to do your own bookkeeping when you need an attorney to review contracts for major deals. It's worth the investment. It's worth every dollar spent to get a good attorney and a good accountant. Plus,
Yes.
it saves you money at the end of the day. Like you invest so much money, but if you get a bad deal, that's going to cost you way more than an attorney would.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm really appreciative of your transparency and your honesty, because that's something that, even from the first time I saw your brand to following you on social and following you over the last few months too, I'm like, Melissa is so honest on the journey. And I think we need more of that and more of that transparency. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's like the real stuff that people need to hear more of. Like,
Yeah.
bottom line. Most importantly, where can we shop your beautiful candles?
So you can currently shop our candles at Nordstrom in select stores and online. You can shop them at Barnes& and Noble nationwide and online at bonitafiercecandles.com. And we're at tons of indie stores across the country. And we do have a store locator on our website. So make sure you go shop all of your local small businesses in your cities at bonitafiercecandles.com.
Incredible. I will put all the links so people can find an indie retailer by them or shop a bigger retailer when they're in the area, to show that there's consumer demand for incredible products like yours. Melissa, thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, go get a candle, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.